call vote, please.
Yep, that's fine. All those in, I'm sorry, do a roll call vote on it.
Councilmember Steve Cody,
No.
Councilmember Patrick Fiore,
No.
Councilmember Marcia Matson,
Yes.
Mayor Karen Cunningham,
No.
Vice Mayor Mark Meritzer.
Yes.
Item fails 3-2. All right, on to the next one, which is item 3D. Would somebody move that forward?
Move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, can you please read item 3D?
A resolution of the Mayor and Village Council of the Village of Palmetto Bay, Florida, providing transparency to the public by requiring Village Council approval of outside counsel that bundles legal services with lobbying services exceeding $25,000, requiring billing statements itemizing legal services separately from lobbying services, providing for an effective date, sponsored by Councilmember Marcia Matson.
Thank you. At this time, we'll take public comment for this item.
I have one that was submitted.
Ms. Gerald is done.
Good evening, Bev Gerald, 14271 Southwest 74th Court. I think this is probably long overdue. Of course, I'm absolutely appalled at the amount of money that was spent on lobbying services, but I do feel that we need to have much more transparency. And this was, in my estimation, it definitely, what went on was a way to get around the $25,000 max that our manager can pay without going to the council for approval. And I think this is what went on with especially the amount of money that was spent for lobbying, but it did not come to the council for approval, and yet was just bundled in as legal services. And yet the description from the items that were attached, and I read them, made it very clear that this was a bundling and it should never have happened. And we talk about, you want transparency in our village. This needs to stop. And this can be avoided by making sure that any issue that exceeds $25,000 come before the council, and so it can be voted on and the public can see where their tax money is going. I know we need to be very concerned about this. I see some of the most ridiculous discussions coming from the state. Let's do away with property tax. Well, there won't even be a Palmetto Bay, there won't even be a county. Considering the property tax exceeds 40% of our income. So I think we need to watch all our dollars. We need to very carefully think where they go and not cover it up with putting stuff together. And that's my impression, and that's what I believe. And I would hope that you would support this, because I think it needs to be, we need to have much better transparency and not put things together that don't belong together. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else here. Comment by form?
Kelly Willis, 8460 Southwest 180th Street, Palmetto Bay, Florida. She does not support the item.
Thank you. All right, this is yours, Councilwoman Matson.
Yes, this is about Tanglewood Park and the process of procurement that was violated as a result of the effort by the village to acquire this property, which, in case nobody remembers what it is, it's the county-owned FP&L transit or high-tension wires on 140, 141st Street. So I brought this item because the system of procurement was violated, in my opinion. Before I get any questions about the
strikes and the additions to my resolution, let me just say that I was not informed by the manager or the attorney that it was actually the manager who hired the lobbyist for this, and I had put in there that it was the attorney. So it's actually the manager, and the attorney approved of that change. All right. Now, the manager hired a lobbyist for $10,000. Now, our process, our legal process for hiring lobbyists for any services and for contracts and so on in this village is to go through the public meeting at the council. The council votes on it, and we've done that with lobbyists in the past. But somehow this was different. This was special. The lobbyist was hired by the manager for $10,000, and then his pay, which totaled $187,500, was shifted over to the legal funds. Now, the legal department, in my resolution and the exhibits, I have the various resolutions that show that the council did approve of the attorney, the village attorney, hiring attorneys, and no limit, no cap on the legal budget. So by shifting the lobbyist, who was also an attorney, over to the legal department, it circumvented the regular legal procurement process. Didn't come to a public council. The process is anything under $25,000 for procurement, the manager can do on his own. Anything over that has to come to the council so that the public can find out about it. Now, you might say, did a lobbyist do any legal work? Well, I was able to come up with a video where actually he was at a meeting with the neighbors, and he presented himself as the outside counsel or special counsel to the group. So I know he did one piece of work that I know of in terms of legal work. But another lawyer, whose invoices I have also as exhibits, was hired to do legal work for the same property, Tanglewood Park, charging $19,466.25 for a grand total of $206,946.25 for the lobbyist and the legal work. Now, what did the lawyer/lobbyist do for almost $250,000? Well, he set up a Friends of Tanglewood, which is purportedly a residents committee, but somehow or another we found in the last few days that its office is in the Falls Post Office building, and also it's now getting involved in the USDA property. So that's an interesting, what I would call a dark money group. It set up a petition, theoretically by residents. The lobbyists set up a rally. It lobbied the county commissioners to allow Palmetto Bay to buy this property. It set up a barrage of messages to residents to support buying this property. And the poor residents who wanted to purchase the property a whole year before Palmetto Bay got wind of the property, they were vilified. And I've said this before, I mean, this lobbyist's actions made their lives hell. And these are our neighbors, for just wanting to buy a property that their neighbors had bought across 77th Avenue. So what happened with the lobbyist's work? The county commissioners told Palmetto Bay to get it together between the ones who want to acquire and the ones who didn't want to acquire, the ones who wanted the neighbors to be able to acquire because they had legally put in their bid. The council in January this year voted 3-2 not to acquire it because of the process, because of primarily the way the neighbors were treated and the circumvention with the lobbyist. Then the county commissioners passed a new law that established a process for surplus property going to municipalities. However, they exempted Palmetto Bay, specifically exempted Palmetto Bay. Then, not long ago, a month ago, I think, seems like time really passes, council reversed itself by 3-2 to acquire the property and to spend up to another $60,000 if need be. However, the property was cut down from 4 folios to only 1, and as a result, the property is smaller than it was before. So what's the result? So now $206,946 plus potentially $65,000. That's $271,946 for a property we have not acquired. And that's potentially $350,000 because I haven't added in the designer's cost. I couldn't find the designer's cost for the park. This has set a precedent for lobbyist costs over $25,000 to be covered by an unlimited legal budget with no public transparency and no public approval. There's no Tanglewood property acquisition. And in fact, this same lobbyist, according to a public records request that I saw, is actually helping Mr. Cody strengthen Mr. Cody's lawsuit against the village and against Mark Merwitzer, our vice mayor, to remove the vice mayor from office. This is the same lobbyist who sent a message to Mr. Cody to help strengthen his case to remove the vice mayor. So what's the cure to this? Well, I wrote what I hoped would be a cure because basically they got away with it. They spent the money. Still no property. I would like to have a conversation about the manager doing this, but I'm sure I won't have the votes, so I'm not going to ask for that. But short of asking the council to consider these actions, it's a violation of our code. I would like to see us pass a law that lobbying and legal, what I call bundling, which is disguising lobbyist fees under the legal budget, has to go through the public process at a council meeting and require any legal work by one of these lobbyists who's also a lawyer, that all legal work has to be itemized like lawyers do under Florida Bar 1, Bar 4.15. And in fact, I included Mr. Lott's invoice in here, and also, I believe, another lawyer's bill in here to show how lawyers specifically say the date, what work they did, what it was for, hours billing, and how much it cost. So that's what my resolution is, and I will read it. The Village Council determines that it is in the best interest of the public to ensure transparency in lobbying and legal services by requiring Village Council approval of outside counsel that bundles legal services with lobbying services exceeding $25,000. Outside counsel that is retained for legal services and lobbying in excess of $25,000 shall itemize its legal fees separately from lobbying fees in billing statements using standard legal practices specifying dates, hours, description of work performed, and dollar value. And this is so when and if, I hope we don't anymore, hire a lobbyist and have him do legal services so that it's clear to the public what legal services he is doing. So I hope you'll support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think you made some pretty strong statements there, and some of them were against the manager, so I'd like to give him the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Olga, I'm going to ask you in a moment to put my computer up. Madam Mayor, let me just preface my comments with, as the village manager, I have no issue with the resolution in front of you. Certainly within the village council's purview to adopt a change to your current policy. If that's the pleasure of a majority of the village council, I have no issue at all with that, totally within your authority and purview. However, on multiple occasions, Dr. Madsen has accused me of wrongdoing, violating our code, and I do need to respond in a very detailed way to these accusations. To be honest, Dr. Madsen, with all due respect, it's like sitting here with matches in your hand, complaining about how much time and how much money it took the fire department to put the fire out.
Point of
Ma'am,
order, Madam
Excuse me,
Mayor,
you're out
aren't
of
we
order.
supposed to stay on the topic? I think the
You're out of
manager
order.
is
I am going to be
the manager
on
is-
topic.
is
The manager has the
proceeding
floor.
to go through a whole list that I
You're
have
out of order.
nothing
The
about,
manager has
I
the
know
floor.
nothing
You're
about.
You're out of order, Councilwoman.
I appeal the judgment of the opinion of the mayor. Is there a second?
Thank you. Olga, could you put up my computer, please? So I'm going to walk through, I'm going to use a timeline to walk through and have an honest accounting of Tanglewood. And I also need to defend the name of a very honorable attorney who did more to advance the interests of this village in Tanglewood, in which a majority of the village council, if you could do an inset, because I'm going to speak for a little bit, if you're able to do that, Olga. A majority of the village council wanted to acquire Tanglewood Linear Park. The village attorney and I, the village manager, in a completely ethical and transparent way, worked diligently to carry out the will of an elected majority of this village council. We did hire a very experienced attorney who was proficient in what his specialties are. And I've learned a great deal professionally and personally from him. And later last year, the village council then directed me, and I'm going to get into this as well, to hire that same law firm to continue efforts in regards to the 87th Avenue Bridge. From a factual point of view, a lot of the numbers you talk about in terms of specific to Tanglewood are incorrect, and I will address those. That entire number of $187,500 that the village council paid the Jorge Luis Lopez law firm included the work that we did and incurred for the 87th Avenue Bridge, of which you were the primary proponent of, hiring a lobbyist for that work. About half of that $187,000 was for the 87th Avenue Bridge. Factual discrepancy number 2, Exhibit B and Exhibit D in your item are incorrect and are not relevant to Tanglewood Linear Park. Lott and Levine Law Firm also did work for the village to determine the ownership of Tanglewood Lake. And if you just give it a very cursory glance, you just see the word Tanglewood, and you may think it applies to the Tanglewood Linear Park. It does not. It is the ownership of Tanglewood Lake. Interestingly enough, the work that I had Mr. Lott do for that was the source of the name for Tanglewood Linear Park. It's the name of the plat. So that's correction number 2, and I'm going to get into many more here as I step through this. In 2018, that's where this all began. The village council did pass a resolution expressing a desire to purchase the folio that really is in question here. the village manager transitioned, COVID hit. I don't know what happened to that effort. I took over towards the end of 2020, and whatever efforts had been done in 2018 had stopped. As you have brought up, Dr. Mattson, the village in 2020 also passed Resolution 111, which I've highlighted. The village attorney is hereby authorized to retain outside counsel without prior authorization of the village council. I'm going to further expand on additional direction that you gave the village attorney and me in regards to Tanglewood Linear Park. Let me return to the timeline. In December 2022, County ISD had already received one of the adjacent property owners' request to purchase the land, and they inquired if the village was interested. We were. I'm going to shortcut a lot of that process that took over a year. The county did their due diligence. The Internal Services Division, as part of Miami-Dade County, evaluated the purchase request from the adjacent property owner and the purchase request from the Village of Palmetto Bay. The county determined it was in the best interest of the public to transfer that property to the Village of Palmetto Bay. And at the end of January of 2024, the county mailed me a draft deed for that exact folio with Palmetto Bay's name on it. I brought that back in February of 2024. The village council gave me authorization to complete the transaction, and we moved forward, but we didn't. Somewhere between February 3rd and March 12th, activity took place, which is entirely, you're right, entirely the vice mayor's right as a candidate for office. But long before the village hired a lobbyist, both you, Dr. Mattson, through letters and emails to the committee members, the vice mayor as a candidate in live public comment on March 12th against, and you have every right to do that, but a majority of the village council had expressed a desire to purchase the park. The county had gone through their due diligence and determined that it was in the public interest for the village to acquire it, not a private homeowner, and yet it was undone on March 12th at the committee level. A few days later, on March 20th, the village had a special emergency council meeting. The council in that passed Resolution 2024-23. I would respectfully draw your attention to Section 4 in my highlighted text. This is your direction to the village attorney. The village council directs that the village attorney to coordinate with the county attorney's office and take other measures he deems necessary to assist in the deferral of this item. Shortly thereafter, on April 3rd, well after the March 12th meeting, that's when the village hired the Jorge Luis Lopez law firm. And yes, we hired him with a lump sum type contract that you have a copy of. If the village would have paid the Jorge Luis Lopez law firm the going hourly rate for the work, the amount of hours, as I go into all the hoops that we were forced to jump through, every time we thought we had a compromise, the goalpost got moved a little farther, and things were delayed a little bit longer, and we had to drag out everything. Again, I'm back to sitting here with the matches criticizing the fire department. So we hired on April 3rd the law firm. April 9th, the committee, the same committee that 1 month earlier had decided to sell that property to an adjacent homeowner, property owner, reversed decision, and the guidance we were giving from that was find a compromise and come back to us, with the expectation certainly that this was going to be a fairly quick turnaround. And if you go view the video from that April 9th meeting, it will bear that out. April 17th, and you did mention that you neglected to include the cost from Kimberly Horn to do the architectural design of the park. That again, due to multiple iterations from residents, we were forced to redesign. Every time they brought up an objection, we said yes. No matter how outlandish it was, we said yes. And we continued to move the ball forward. On April 25th of last year, the ISD hosted the first meeting with residents virtually that took place after that committee hearing on April 9th. On May 8th, Cassandra Rodriguez sent a letter to our District 8 commissioner on behalf of her and her neighbors. If you can see the graphic here, this is the lines that she drew on her document. And the village agreed, we incorporated this into our design. We said yes to everything that was asked of us. The village, in good faith, was seeking a compromise, and a compromise as quickly as possible, because I was incurring costs. Again, on a personal level, park, no park, I could care less. A majority of village council wanted this park. It continued on. We redesigned the park so that we incorporated everything that she asked for. On top of that, we had residents say, we don't trust you. How do we know the village is actually going to do any of this? So we had to hire another law firm, Lawton Levine, whose bill you have in here, to develop a restrictive covenant that would run with the land, that would be recorded and run with the land. Another cost. We're just racking up costs here. We then held on May 30th a Tanglewood design meeting, of which the same people who were opposed to it were opposed to everything. It was in this meeting, I think, where I was exasperated. I had to tell one of the residents, at some point you have to take yes for an answer. We've agreed to everything you said. Are we at the point where we can just shake hands and say we have an agreement? No, no one. Nothing was ever good enough, because the play all along was just delay this. Just delay and delay, move the goalposts, make the village spend more money. We did more redesigns. I'll show you the most egregious one. To me, this should bother any taxpayer in this village. Here's one of the parcels of Tanglewood Linear Park. This is all land owned by Miami-Dade County. There are 3 homeowners who either themselves have just gone out on their own and appropriated public land, put fences up, some of them have structures here. I've been in their backyards without authority. There's a word for that. I'm not going to use it. But the village, in the interest of coming up with a compromise, had worked together with our design firm. And what we did was we said, no problem, I'll tell you what, we're going to make what you did legal. We'll make sure that you have the proper deed for that. And we're going to draw the property line on these two parcels right along where you already have it, where your fence lines already are. We'll draw that there. This was the initial design. Again, this is what Cassandra Rodriguez wanted. We drew it exactly where she wanted it. But you know what? One of the residents here was like, that's not good enough. These people up here get more land than us. We want the same amount of land. So, as someone who is an honest public servant, I looked at this and I choked on it, and I was like, so not only are you going to get rewarded for occupying land that's not yours, we're going to give you more. And we did. We changed this design to give them more land, just so that we could come up with a compromise and move forward. And we're still talking about how much money we're spending redesigning, additional legal work. There was litigation hanging over this the entire time. Two of the adjacent homeowners are lawyers. And we had threats of litigation from the beginning on this project. So to say that you can separate the lobbying and the legal advice just doesn't wash. This has always been together. There's a reason why most lobbyists are also attorneys. You need that advice. What does an attorney actually do? He's your advocate. That's the same thing a lobbyist does. And again, we had a lump sum that we were paying Mr. Lopez that when it became clear that was going to exceed my initial $25,000, Mr. Della Gloria picked it up, and he continued it in accordance with the lawful policies that the village council had established. Again, a majority of the village council, whether you agree with it or not, wanted this park. We hosted additional architectural renderings I already talked about. July 1st, I'm going to deviate briefly from Tanglewood to talk about 87th Avenue Bridge. What was happening at the end of June? Well, the village council was receiving numerous emails from residents who saw the effect we were having with a top law firm representing us. The fact that we won 2 votes at the committee and the commission level were unheard of. And they wanted that same effort for the bridge. And you all were getting emails from residents saying, we want you to hire a lobbyist for the 87th Avenue Bridge. Madam Mayor, if you could indulge me for just one moment here. This is only about 3 minutes. Or I'm sorry, this is like 5 minutes. This is from July 1st, 2024. And if I could play it. Hopefully the volume comes through here. Well, I'm not going to belabor the point. We can, if you'd like, if you doubt anything I'm about to say, we'll be happy to go to the audio here. But Dr. Mattson, you very passionately advocated for us to hire a lobbyist and for that budget to be unlimited. Councilman, well, Madam Mayor, we have a factual, we can play your words, and believe me, I'm
I
ready.
would suggest you go ahead and play them so that
Okay.
she can hear them.
All right. I need to
I
get,
never advocated for an unlimited
Sorry,
budget.
the manager
ever.
has the floor.
Councilman Cody originally proposed a $25,000 budget, which I was about to play here. Hey, Eric. That's fine. What I need you to do is go to the meeting, July 1st.
Madam Mayor, when am I going to be able to respond to all of these comments?
When he's done speaking, just
Well,
like
how
when
much,
you,
how much time?
as long
Go
as
to
it
Okay,
takes.
then I get
You've
that much
accused
time, is
him
that
of
correct? I get that much time? Thank you.
I didn't say that. I said you've accused him, you've made some very strong accusations. He has a right to give the appropriate and factual timeline and to defend himself.
Yes, ma'am, and also to correct factual errors. And much of what was paid to the Jorge Luis Lopez law firm was for the bridge. Respectfully, at your request, you came to the meeting with a resolution here and asked for the village council to adopt it. And as soon as we get it up, we'll play it.
While you're waiting, may I respond to the comments so far, Madam Mayor? Well, you're not the mayor, Steve. May I respond while we're waiting?
No, I also said no. Did you say no? Thank you, de facto.
No, it was Steve who said no. He's the new
Yeah,
mayor.
Madam Mayor, point of order. Again, I've stated before, this is not a court of law. Can we move on here and just vote on the merits of the resolution? I believe the manager, I actually agree with the manager. The merits of the resolution itself, he has no problems with, correct? That's what you said. I don't think, we're relitigating something
Yeah,
over,
there-
and
I will-
regurgitating over and over and over again. That's something I don't want to hear because
Yeah, I
I had to
understand,
take
but
the
right
brunt
now-
of the pressure on this.
Well,
And
right-
that's my,
well,
I mean,
I actually, I
what else to
disagree. I
say?
think we've all been taking pressure, but right now, the
Madam Mayor, if
manager
I can-
has the floor.
If I can, the recitals themselves, at a minimum, are ethical violations if you pass this. I'm saying Councilman Fiore, the policy, that's up to the village council. You want to adopt a policy the recitals would, by adopting those recitals, you're actually saying I committed an ethical violation here. Yes, you are, ma'am. And you
I'm gonna go
actually
back and
accused
forth.
me twice of violating our code. Are we ready? All right, put it up to the 54-minute mark. May have to go back a little bit, but we'll just go right to Councilwoman Mattson here.
I call for the orders of the day.
Mr. Parliamentarian?
I sniff a palace coup about to happen.
Yeah, I'm happy to second it for the purposes
The
of
orders of the day
discussion.
for the agenda,
Chair.
to call the
Yes, so we
agenda.
have a second by
Well-
Mayor Cunningham and a motion. Any discussion?
Unfortunately, someone else has the
have discussion.
floor.
Go ahead.
Okay, but here, I
Well, I
can't hear
did
what
put
you're
forth a
saying.
resolution, and that's,
Can you mute?
What the vice mayor just said, he's calling for orders of the day, which is the agenda.
Okay.
Okay. I'm saying someone else has the floor, but even if the orders of the day trump that position of somebody speaking, it will still call for a vote. So if you want to interrupt this to call for the vote, to actually have the orders of the day adhered to, you can make that motion. Well, you've called for the orders of the day, so now it has to be voted on.
Second.
all right, discussion, and I'm not sure what it is we're voting on.
You're voting on calling the item that's on the agenda.
Oh, I want to hear the rest, so I would vote no.
That's what you're
We
doing.
need to take a vote.
I understand, I just want to be to clarify.
Yes, that's what
A
you're
no
doing.
vote means that we can
Continue.
hear the truth, we can hear the rest of the manager's
Correct,
presentation.
correct.
Okay. Hold up, no, not yet. Hold on one second. We have to wait for Councilmember Fiore to come back. Okay, we're taking a vote on orders of the day. By that, which means, based on what the attorney just told me, if you vote yes, we're just calling the question. If you vote no, we can hear the rest of the manager's presentation, and he can correct the record.
But point of order, how does that differ then for a motion to call the question? You're saying they're both the same.
Just about the same, yes. Well, calling the question has to do with the specific item. What he is calling for is for us to stick to the actual agenda.
Right, which is what we're doing
Well,
here. So,
that's not exactly what we're doing, but at any rate,
but wouldn't there first have to be a finding by the parliamentarian that we have strayed from the agenda in order for orders of the day to be, I mean, I took Robert's rules in high school too, so,
I understand.
yeah,
We have not strayed from the agenda.
right. So then I would
Because
say
the
that this,
item- Because he's addressing the item on the agenda.
so I would suggest that his orders of the day should not be well received because we're still on the agenda.
Then vote no. If that's what, but it calls for a vote.
A quick question to you, because you just indicated, in your opinion, legal opinion, have we strayed from the agenda?
We have not.
Thank you.
Okay,
right,
I have a comment about this item.
It's
If we
have a
vote
motion.
yes, if we vote-
Councilwoman, we have a motion.
Yes.
Is that
No,
what
but
you're
we
going
can
to?
talk about it because
I
it's a
know,
motion.
that's what I'm asking. Is that what you're going to talk about?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah. That if we vote yes on this, then we return back to the agenda and we take a vote, and that's the end of this whole thing. Because I'm going to go on for half an hour too, maybe 45 minutes, like you are, Mr. Manager. So just to let you all know, we're going to be here till 11 o'clock, unless you just want to call it. Otherwise, I won't say one word, and I have many refutations to make, but I won't say a word if you vote yes.
Never heard extortion being wrapped up in pink before.
Extortion, right?
All right, do a roll call vote, Madam Clerk. This is on the motion for the order of the day.
Okay.
Anybody is fine.
Councilman Patrick Fiore?
Oh. I don't know what this means.
Councilmember Stephen Cody?
No,
Councilmember Marcia Matson?
Yes.
Mayor Karen Cunningham?
No.
Vice Mayor Mark Maritzer?
I'm going to invoke my right to explain my vote in the rules, which is that I believe discussing other services outside of the scope of this item, such as architectural renderings and other
taking a
items.
vote. Could you
Yes,
just
I'm allowed
vote?
to explain my vote. So that's in the rules. So as I was just saying, we're deviating a bit far from the agenda. And we're also going a bit far by bringing up previous videos. And in my view, this is meant to harass Councilwoman Matson and not actually stick to the conversation at hand, which is this item. So I'll be voting yes. Thank you.
With all due respect, Vice Mayor, Councilwoman Matson has accused me 3 times of violating our code. So if
Announce
you could
the
go
vote.
to
No, I have not. I'm sorry,
54.
I have not.
The motion failed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Manager. Yes?
Go to 54, please. Let's hear their own words.
I think you're referring to... Talking about circumventing the...
I can't hear.
procurement
put it on your
process, and I'm
desk.
trying to rectify that.
Okay, I
I'm not
have a
making any
resolution that I
personal
wrote
attacks, I'm talking
and
about
put it on
facts.
everyone's
We're listening to a video which we can't hear because you're talking.
Tonight as an urgent matter, asking people to the council to approve of it. And the reason I did not specify an amount of money, and I don't think it should be $25,000. I think it should be at least what we have spent on the Lopez Law Firm for the Pocket Park, which now, according to the manager's report, is $37,500 at this point. So I'd like not to have a low number. I'd like us to be able to authorize a higher number because we
Authorize.
might need more than one lobbyist. And this is for stopping the construction of the 87th Avenue Bridge. And there was a meeting today at the bridge in which many residents showed up to protest it, and some residents showed up who wanted it. And from that, I felt that it was important for the council to support. Now, we have filed a lawsuit, and so far we are on an appeal because we did not win that lawsuit, but we're on an appeal. But at this point, now that the construction equipment is there at the canal, it's very important to try to intercede with the county commissioners, the county mayor, and any other relevant official or individual. And for that, I propose that we hire a lobbyist without a cap of $25,000, but to go ahead and hire a lobbyist for the need be, because it really is an urgent matter. The construction equipment is there and the construction is going to be coming.
I
along
said
sooner than
authorize.
later. That means going to the council, authorize. I did not say
Mayor, I think I have the floor.
speaking. The Manager First of all, has I the do floor. support the idea, I've always supported the idea of having lobbyists.
Cut the
I
video.
actually was surprised when I saw.
You can cut it. It's fine. Okay,
I
put my,
specifically said authorize. That means
Interrupting
going to the
again.
council.
Dr. Mattson,
I didn't open up my
The manager
mouth.
has the floor.
This is,
The
all right.
manager has the floor.
Dr. Mattson,
This is
We
so
took a
out of
vote,
order.
and the manager has the floor.
Point of order, Mr. Attorney. The point of order is that he is bringing in discussion that I had, which is authorizing the council to have a lobbyist salary. He's bringing in from the bridge. This is not relevant to our conversation on Tanglewood Park.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Manager.
Wait a second, I
Thank
did
you,
point of
Madam
order.
There's a point of order. From the discussion that I've heard, where you're indicating that these have been bundled, then what is being discussed is in fact part of the item in front of us.
It's not, it's bundled for Tanglewood Park, not for the bridge. He's bringing up bridge.
If you had allowed him, because I've seen this, if you had allowed him to continue, you would actually hear your saying that it should be the same as Tanglewood, and you authorized me to enter into a lobbying agreement for the bridge.
Thank you. Please continue.
thank you, Mr. Attorney. Olga, if you could put my computer back up, I'll wrap this up briefly. I think I've made enough points here. That was July 1st. July 9th, there was another CIOIC meeting. We gave an update as to where we were in terms of meeting with the residents. The village's intent in July was to get on the agenda for September to come back to the committee, where the committee could approve it. It would then go to the commission, ideally in October, and the village would eventually have, the village and the residents would each have their pieces of Tanglewood Linear Park. That didn't happen. There was just more delay. In fact, a couple of the members of this council now that made comments as to what's the rush. The commissioner can bring this back at any time. Why are we hurrying? We're not hurrying. We had been working this for almost 2 years, literally, at this point. And we incurred a significant amount of money because of the constant shifting of the goalposts, never saying yes, even when we agreed to everything. On August 12th, the village attorney did sign that retainer agreement with the Jorge Luis Lopez law firm regarding the 87th Avenue Bridge. Very similar contract to what was signed for Tanglewood. About half of the costs in front of you, that $187,500, are for the bridge and not for Tanglewood. That's the relevance of me introducing the bridge and your comments to basically spend whatever we needed to spend. And no, ma'am, I'm not exaggerating. And the intent of the council for people like the village attorney and me are important. What is the intent of the council? Well, the intent of the council on July 1st was stop the bridge. Here's a checkbook, whatever it costs. That was clearly the intent. If I play that whole discussion, I will absolutely make my point, what I just said. So the intent of the village council is important. I was certainly acting honorably and in no way violated any element of the code. We did have additional meetings after that. I also incurred the cost for a surveyor, and then obviously in January, it all came to an end. So with that, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
So my first question is, according to Florida bar rules, if you hire a lawyer, you're entitled to request an itemized bill for your services. I have it pulled up right here on the Florida Bar's website that is the case. Have we ever gotten an itemized bill for the hourly rates of Mr. Lopez at all?
No, sir, and we never did. And we, as I said in the beginning, we agreed to a lump sum monthly retainer type arrangement. And if the cost went higher, we would both negotiate in good faith for that cost. Believe me, we could not afford his hourly cost.
Good.
Yeah, so first of all, even if we have a lump sum, you're still entitled to that breakdown. I have it pulled up right here. So I think I probably had requested that several times in my records request. So I never saw that, and the fact that you never were able to provide to me that hourly breakdown of services just shows me that the bulk of the work was lobbying. The other thing I would also point out to the people watching tonight is you had this great presentation prepared tonight to give this factual timeline. What I'll just say is two things about that. Number one, this is a complete ambush because I remember during the January meeting, you said I was ambushing you with all these different things and how unprepared I was or how unprepared you were to answer these questions. And now I'm grateful that you're prepared to answer these questions tonight. I just think as a professional courtesy, by the way, I think it'd be good to get this information in advance if you planned on presenting that. I know you worked hard on it. The question I have is, are you willing to do that in the future?
Mr. Vice Mayor, I was prepared to go one of two ways. If Dr. Mattson presented her resolution and it was purely, let's change the policy here, let's not accuse the village manager of anything wrong, I wasn't going to say a word. 3 times she accused me of violating our code. 3 times. And I'm the one doing the ambush? No, sir. I was a Marine for a long time. I'm the wrong person to get into a firefight with, sir.
I would also make the suggestion that you sit with the manager. This presentation was prepared prior because these are leftover items that we didn't get to. I met with the manager.
So here's my follow-up then. If you had this presentation prepared, and this is valuable information, by the way, this is the first time I'm hearing a lot of this information, even though I've submitted a lot of records requests about this. I think the public has a right to hear this information. I'm glad you presented it tonight. The fact that you met with the manager to discuss this, I think if you're going to meet with one council member in the future, I think you should share something with the rest of the council. That's just, in my view, fairness. The other point I would also make is, do you have, up until the July 1st meeting, the total expense breakdown of our lobbyist contracts and fees through July 1st, which is the time in which Ms. Mattson made that motion?
I believe those invoices are in the package on Exhibit E or F, whatever the
F.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councilwoman Mattson,
Okay.
then Councilmember Cody, then Councilmember Fiore.
Well, I've got questions. Is she going to do a
Do you have
debate?
questions? Go ahead with your questions first. Let's just do questions first.
Yes,
Do you have
thank you.
questions of the manager as well, Councilwoman? Go ahead.
So I did these invoices from the Tanglewood Park invoices from a public records request. So one of them specifically said bridge, and I discarded that. The other ones are all Tanglewood. So I really don't agree with you because I'm not coming up with fake stuff. This was sent to me by public records request by the village.
Do you have a question for him?
So why are you saying that I have factual information that it's not factual? Because you sent it, the village sent it to me. I don't know if you sent it, but the village in a public records request sent it to me.
The invoices you have may or may not have Tanglewood on them. There was no Tanglewood work with the Jorge Luis Lopez law firm going on in the second half. I mean, once we got past August, it was all bridge. All of that work was the bridge. And we came close. Had a key decision maker made a different decision, we would have been in a different place on the bridge. We won on Tanglewood, and we came close on the bridge. It's still not over either, I would point out.
Thank you. You have another question?
Not right now.
Thank you. Councilmember Cody, question?
Well, actually, this is to the parliamentarian. Does a member of this council or a charter officer have a right to respond to accusations that are made to them under Robert's rules?
Yes.
Okay. And in fact, I know that several times Mr. Merwitzer has stated that he is calling upon his right to respond. And is that what our village manager did?
Well, by the way, what he actually said was that under our rules, he has the right to do that. The rules being what we've adopted, which kind of trumps Robert rules, but for all intents and purposes, they're the same on that point.
I appreciate the distinction. No, I mean, I'm ready to vote on this, but
Thank you.
Talking about it all you want.
Councilmember Fiore, do you have questions?
A question, no.
Thank you. Comments? Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, so first of all, I took a bunch of notes during your presentation. The first thing I would point out is the resolution that you said that authorizes the attorney to seek out legal services. If you look at the whereas clauses of those resolutions, it specifically mentions lawsuits in the legislative intent of this. There was no mention in that item of hiring lobbyists. So I want to point out that distinction. The other thing that's really important here is I think something got lost in translation here with some of our items. As deems necessary is not a green light to break code, in my opinion. What I'll just point out is that our code is very specific. Even if we do authorize you to go look for someone to go procure something, the code is very specific about what you're supposed to do to bring a procurement item to the council. We do procurement all the time on this dais. Had we had a public and transparent process with the village residents about what we wanted to do with Tanglewood, my guess is there'd be a community uproar. And what we had instead was a secretive process where administratively we said that this is legal services, and here we are. So what I would just also point out is that our code, it has an exemption, and when I requested a public records for this item, specifically highlighted was the legal services as part of this. What I'll point out is I have this contract pulled up, and I'd like to read a little bit of it because I think it's very important that we have some actual factual background as to what actually Mr. Lopez did. One of my favorite provisions in here is to analyze opposition activities and strategies to stay ahead in the approvals process and assist the Palmetto Bay team with preparation of documentation and compliance checks for the proposal, and design and implement public relations campaigns to generate public support for the project. Now, to me, none of that to me is legal. And I think it's just such a stretch to say that, oh, we can bypass our own procurement code to go through with this. To me, this is not about whether or not we could hire lobbyists or not. We hire lobbyists all the time up here in a transparent way. We currently have one in Tallahassee. What I also point out is in your item that you brought up saying that seeking deferral is what the village was going after, and that gave you carte blanche to go ahead and hire and do whatever you deem necessary outside of the scope of law is just, to me, that's just crazy, because seeking a deferral and the methods of which to do so is ambiguous at best. I know that my colleague sitting to the left of me, the Honorable Mr. De La Goria, sent out a letter to the county commission basically alleging illegalities and a bunch of other problems, and that was the cited reason for that deferral, not Mr. Lopez's lobbying, to my knowledge. The other thing I would also point out is I know that you're saying that, oh, well, we hired Mr. Lopez for the bridge, and therefore all the previous work that we did before that was totally valid and legitimate. I did the math. It was $72,500 by May 30th is the total of those invoices, and your office is the one that labeled them as Tanglewood. So if you want to say there's a record error and say it was something else, I'm all ears because I'd love to listen to that. The other thing I would also point out here is that $25,000 is, anything under $25,000 is obviously a lawful policy. I respect that. This is $72,500. The motion that Ms. Madsen made was to hire a lobbyist for the bridge. Up to that bridge, I actually have all of the invoices right in front of me here for the bridge, and I'm so glad you brought it up because it was roughly $65,000 from August through December is what Mr. Lopez has invoiced us for the bridge. So that is what I have in front of me. It was not anywhere near half. And also, when I was preparing for my item back in January, I looked through all of your previous managers' reports to tally up all the Tanglewood representation from Mr. Lopez, and that's where I got my number of over $132,000. If you want to correct those reports, I'm all ears because I'd love to hear from you on that. But to me, you're able to show a vote for a lobbyist on a bridge. That was fair game, Ms. Madsen. I totally understand where you're coming from on that. But there was no vote on whether or not we should seek a lobbyist for the park, and that is the point. So to have an unlimited budget for the bridge, but also somehow tie that into a Tanglewood work, to me is just a huge problem because now you're commingling two different lobbyist contracts. If we did not authorize you to have services on a lobbyist contract on another issue, that's just, to me, completely, it's wrong to do that. Because at what point can you decide you can lobby on another issue that we didn't authorize you to lobby on? So to me, that's the whole problem here. I appreciate the presentation. I'd have appreciated some extra heads up, just me personally saying that. But other than that, I would just say that there's a lot of stretching to justify prior actions that I'm very uncomfortable with. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Councilwoman Madsen, then Councilmember Cody, and then Councilmember Fiore.
Okay,
Your comments, not questions.
comments, okay. So I did discard, as the Vice Mayor said, the $65,000 bridge invoice that the village sent me along with my request specifically for Tanglewood. I discarded that. Now, whether all those other invoices for lump sum amounts were for Tanglewood, you have to understand, I presume they were because that's what I requested from the village. I didn't request bridge invoices. So I took the village at its word that that was accurate information. In terms of the county meeting that we were all at, that I recall that the County Internal Services Division Manager was asked by different commission members as to whether he actually needed to inform the village after the residents had applied to acquire the property, and he said no, he did it on his own volition, and actually I think he was reprimanded for that, so that the village wouldn't have known unless he just did it. Okay, take other measures by any means necessary. Well, obviously this is not a green light, it's not an open purse. The procurement process is coming to a public meeting, to a council meeting. That's how we do things. We don't move it around over to the legal budget to have an open-ended payment. Okay, another thing that I was struck by while you were commenting was how much this reminded me of old-fashioned imperialism. That is, a powerful government comes to a group of people and says, well, we want what you want. We want what you're trying to buy. Or in the case that I'm thinking of, historic cases, I'm not going to mention any groups, but the powerful government comes in and says, we want your land. So what is it going to take for you to say yes to us? Because we're going to get it. We're going to get it. You might have a right to it, but you got to say yes. We got to compromise so we can get it. And that's really what this reminds me of. It's like imperialism. It's really incredible. All right, so how much is the architectural design of the park? I never did get that figure. And if you can give that to me, I'd appreciate it. Then I can add up the numbers exactly, because I like to be accurate on my numbers. All right, so what does it take to say yes to neighbors? Well, basically, it takes hiring a lobbyist to carry out a campaign that bulldozes the neighbors, frankly. And the neighbors really were suffering from this. My heart went out to them. I mean, that's what he did. Why do the residents have to take yes for an answer? They don't have to take yes for an answer. They got their bid in about a year before the village did. And even today, the county does not have to give priority to the village for that property because of the ordinance that they passed. All right, now, yes, I was very much in favor of the bridge having a lobbyist. In fact, I talked about that when the whole bridge first came out back in 2021. I talked about a lobbyist. The council that was seated then did not want to hire a lobbyist, but I was one of the first to advocate for that. I thought this was going to be an issue with the county commission, but no, we didn't do that. Hired at the very end. However, I was quite concerned about that because all of a sudden, Mr. Manager, you said, well, we'll hire the person we hired, I don't really want to say his name, that already is working on Tanglewood, and I thought, uh-oh, this is going to be a problem because there might be a mix. And my thought was maybe he'd be working on Tanglewood when he should be working on the bridge, and how would we differentiate? But then I thought, no, I won't worry about it, but now it has come to roost that actually I should have worried about it because you are entangling the bridge with Tanglewood, and I'm talking about Tanglewood. I'm not talking about the bridge. And what I said about the bridge, which absolutely I would believe in authorizing any more money for a lobbyist, that's not relevant to this discussion. The discussion is about Tanglewood. And by the way, the lobbyist has lost Tanglewood and it's also lost the bridge. So that's the lobbyist's work. Now, in terms of recitals and your feeling, your sense that I'm accusing you of ethics violations, I am not. If you feel that I am, let's talk about it. I am not accusing you of ethics violations. I'm talking about a procurement process that was circumvented. And I mean, obviously, since we don't have a bundling policy, then I guess the law wasn't broken, and so now I'm trying to make a law about that. All right, I do want to read one more thing, and this is a quote by our village attorney on March 3rd, 2025, at 1:42 in the video. And Mr. Delagloria said that, as it turns out, the vast majority of his, that is the lobbyist services, the vast majority of his services were for lobbying purposes. Because some of his work involved legal representation in front of the county, it's always been my position that anyone who does any legal work for the village has to go through me, so I don't know what the numbers were. All I did was execute an agreement with him for both legal and lobbying. Because some legal services were performed, it goes through me. So as far as the numbers go, I'm not aware of how he is paid for each service. So really, folks, what I'm trying to get at is setting a procurement policy so this doesn't happen again. When we hire a lobbyist, it goes through the public process, it goes through council approval, and we don't have this bundling and this circumvention any longer. And I hope that you all support my item. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess she made closing remarks too, but go ahead. You have your opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you. This has been a weird presentation and debate, At first, we started with a policy on a very narrow ground, but then on the presentation made by the sponsor, we went into accusations. And then when those accusations were fairly and completely rebutted by our manager, suddenly we're told that that was an ambush. And as far as an ambush goes, I would suggest to Mr. Merwitzer, I probably am on the phone with the manager 3 to 4 times a week discussing various things. And if you have any questions or doubts, I would encourage you to call him. He's very accessible, he's willing to talk to you. I know that the manager doesn't have any conversations with Marcia Mattson, and it shows.
How do you know that?
I've got the floor. So I know that it also feels like I'm sitting in on a comedy, because I think that it was hinted that if we say the lobbyist lawyer's name 3 times, or any time, it'll cause problems. I'll say it, Lopez, Lopez, Lopez. Nothing bad happened. I've known George Lopez for probably 35 years. He came up at a time when the only lobbyist who was operating in Dade County, because of his close relationship with Steve Clark, was Steve Ross. And Steve Ross was later assisted by Dusty Melton, and that was it. Once we got to a much larger county commission, and once we got to districts, suddenly everybody wanted to, or was willing to listen to other voices. And George has certainly been one of the strongest voices out there. He did succeed for us. And his role was both as a lawyer and as a lobbyist. Sometimes they overlap. And I know you've never practiced law. Know you've never been a registered lobbyist. But they overlap very, very often. He has the ear of several commissioners. He got us the success, and the reason that we ended up losing after our voting 3-2 to get the property was that there was another vote, 3-2, to come back. That's now changed. There's nothing magic about the number 3-2. The will of this body changed. And I think the reason that one of my colleagues made the attack that was made was because there's a certain amount of butthurt. I would tell you that I am not going to support this matter. If it had come to us in a pure form, but it has been so tainted that I don't think that I can support it, and I would encourage my colleagues not to support it. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Fiore.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and I apologize for my point of order and getting upset earlier to everyone, to all my colleagues, but sometimes it can be very, thank you. You know, I agree, there's a lot of good things that were said here. First off, as stated, I did not vote for this park way back in when the previous council was here in February of 2024, or whenever that was, and the vice mayor is actually correct. If a vote had been held to hire a lobbyist, I would have voted no, but that's in the past. And I agree with what Mr. Cody said, and I will and I would like to say to Dr. Mattson, and I agree with what the manager said, if you had just stuck to this paragraph, this is actually good policy. However, I think you should have just left out all of the things you said. This is actually good, and what I would like to do is, I'm not going to make any amendments because I do agree with Mr. Cody. Based on all the discussion this evening, this would be kind of tainted, I believe is the word you used. However, I am going to sit down with our esteemed city manager and city attorney and I may bring a resolution very similar to this, Dr. Mattson, if it's okay with you, back maybe at the June meeting. Maybe the number isn't 25,000. Maybe the number should be 50,000 or 60. I don't know. I will get with our two charter officers to go over that. I think that part was good, is actually good policy. I think the issue here is Mr. Lopez, and maybe I didn't know this. I knew he was a lobbyist. I didn't know he was an attorney also. So forgive me, I did not. And I think that's where the issue is. But the policy itself, Dr. Mattson, when I first saw this, hey, this is good. So we don't have this issue going forward, because it appears to me that I guess many of the lobbyists are also, as Mr. Cody said, attorneys. So I think going forward, this policy does need to change, so we don't have to have this again. So I am not going to support this now. However, I would like to, I don't need a committee of the whole. Everything is here. Thank you to Dr. Mattson. I think bringing this back perhaps as a simple resolution with no history of, we all know what happened or whatever, is actually good policy, because it seems to me like going forward we may be dealing with more combination of lobbyist / attorney. And I don't question what the manager did. I've stated before, I've found him to be a professional manager, notwithstanding the social circles of the early 1980s. But you know, there was good comments here were made by the vice mayor and by Mr. Cody, and I really like this, Dr. Mattson. I'm going to bring something. I'm going to bring something back similar to this after I sit down with our two charter officers. But I would leave any discussion of anything else out at the time. Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you for the time, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, you're welcome. Do you have more comments? Go ahead.
I actually just have an amendment. I want to simplify this whole discussion down to let's just get the truth out and make this very simple. I'd like to add a section that directs the village attorney to formally request the village attorney to request an hourly itemized bill showing all of the costs and expenses related to the Tanglewood contract from all lobbyists or lawyers the village hired related to this matter.
Second.
All right, there's a motion. It's been seconded. Mr. Attorney, before we have discussion or ask questions?
I'm just, you're talking about the bills that we've already received. Correct me, go ahead.
I'm requesting an itemized bill for all the expenses and costs related to the Tanglewood contract that Mr. Lopez incurred.
So let him finish, for clarification.
I'm okay. I understand.
It would be on bills that you have already,
Yeah,
bills that have already been paid.
Yeah, he may have to go back and reconstruct his timesheets.
So you've paid him and he's been fired,
Yeah.
and now
Right,
you're
but
going to
he
go
was
back and
dismissed.
ask him to
Yeah.
create a document that.
If that's what,
Whatever.
if that's the motion and it passes, that's what I will attempt to do.
I have a question on the motion.
Go ahead.
Will Mr. Lopez be able to charge the village the time incurred in putting bills in a new format that he wasn't required to? Or are we going to expect him to do this on the come?
May I answer?
No, I'm asking,
You're asking me?
Thank you.
I will ask him to do this as a matter of representing a former client and a request from that former client to please provide these numbers and not charge for that service. I will certainly ask him that.
at what point, though, in terms of the number of hours that he might have to spend, would we say, we will ask you to do that until it gets to X dollars? And then, because he's lobbying and doing stuff for other clients now.
Would you like me to come back and tell you how much he would charge for that?
I know how much he would charge per hour, but I want to
don't.
make sure
That's the
other
whole
people do.
point.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. Can you
Right.
answer the question, or?
All I can do is relate to Mr. Lopez exactly what we're talking about and ask him not to charge us for that service. That's all I can do.
If-
And I'm happy to
But
do
if
it.
he's not willing to do it, are we going to pay him?
Then
to
I'm
do it?
going to come back and tell you that.
Okay.
And then we'll all know.
Okay, is there other
Closing.
discussion on the,
Closing?
I
please.
haven't had the opportunity to
sorry.
speak yet, number one. Number two, it's okay, I'm going to make it short, don't worry.
No, that wasn't signed
But
for-
we have a motion on the floor. So there's a motion, it's been seconded, there's been discussion. Can we vote on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. All right, the amendment fails. Okay, so we're back on the original item. I'm going to make my comments extremely short because I think everyone's pretty much said everything. Thank you very much for the presentation, the timeline, and the time and effort you put in with correcting the record. Councilwoman Mattson, thank you for bringing the item. I have to agree with my colleagues, though. To me, this is something that has just been really politicized. It's been politicized during a campaign. I have the campaign contributions from some of the people that signed the letter gave a candidate campaign contributions, $500 being the maximum that I could see through the course of that. So there's been a lot of politicizing. There have been emails that have gone out. There have been accusations that have been made. The reality is that we won. We won until January when we lost and let Mr. Lopez go. I know you did mention Councilwoman Mattson. I don't want to say his name, yet you put his name multiple times in the resolution. So, and I do have an aversion to resolutions, you know this, so we've had a personal conversation about this, to resolutions that include individuals' names. You and I have talked about that. That happened with me back in, 2015, 2016 maybe. I find it to be, extremely unprofessional. If we just brought the item and said, hey, we don't have policy on this, something happened, or we think something happened, and we shouldn't, this is the way we should do it, or this is the way the council wants the administration to do it moving forward, it probably would have been extremely simple, in my opinion. But here we are. So I'm not going to support the item as is. I'll look forward to seeing the item that either you or Councilmember Fiore brings to give the manager and the attorney some direction. I do know on our next council meeting, and I haven't read the item in its entirety, but the May 5th council meeting, we have an item that I think you've proffered, which I won't go into because it's for another meeting, and I don't want anybody to call the order of the day, but it has to do with invoicing 200%. I'm going to read it because I'm not sure exactly what it says, but I also agree, just like we see the checks, the canceled checks, it would be good to have invoices. I've had to ask for invoices multiple times, for different occasions, not multiple times. Once I've asked, I do receive. But, it's just easier to make it a part of the regular agenda. But again, I'll be looking at the item a little bit more closely, and that probably would have solved some of whatever is creating the issue here. So, all right, that's all I got. Can
Closing?
we call?
Closing comments on my part?
I think you already closed.
No, Robert's Rules of Order
Everyone-
entitles me to
You're
give
good.
closing.
Can you make it a very short closing?
Okay, I will.
Thank you.
I'll make it short. Okay, first of all, in terms of ambush, you had, Mr. Manager, you had 2 weeks at least of my item to work over it, to look at it. And I had no idea you were going to throw the bridge in there. I mean, bridge and Tanglewood are not the same. So I would consider it almost an ambush of me to throw the bridge in with Tanglewood and expect me to defend on that. In terms of the mayor's comment about politicized, well, it was actually the village and the lobbyist whose name I have not mentioned, the lobbyist who actually politicized this whole thing by sending out message after message after message and villainizing the neighbors. And actually, I am quite passionate about that, and I'm sorry that People did not appreciate my passion because the neighbors were bulldozed. They were trampled over. And I'm sticking up for the neighbors. It's like this big, powerful village came in and told them, we want what you have applied for legally, and we're taking it. And what does it take for you to tell us that it's okay? So that's why I'm passionate about it. I think it was completely wrong to do that. All right, and Commissioner, I just wanted to address that I'm glad that you're going to bring something back, because if you vote no, obviously it's going to fail. But I want to say that if this item is good, I wish you would vote for it. I mean, I'm willing to amend it to what you would like to have, frankly, instead of just voting no against something because, well, I'm assuming it's because you didn't like my presentation, or maybe it went on too long, but that to me is not a reason for turning down something that you have said is really good. So if you would like to amend, let's do that, please, so this doesn't go down.
Thank you. I have a couple quick questions for the attorney. Well, actually, maybe for the manager and attorney. Well, let me ask the attorney first. When the council takes a position, 3-2, let's say 3-2, and there are individuals that don't agree, 2, let's say, in this case, what are the legalities in terms of sending emails from your public email in opposition to a position that the council has taken?
As long as that individual is not expressing their acting on behalf of the entire council, then they're permitted to do that.
Yeah, I was just curious, because I think in a way that has, it created, it created a lot of confusion. And I do have to say, because I was at the meeting, I think you were too, Alex Munoz? Clearly said at the committee meeting that he felt that the property was best served with the city. He said that. It's on the audio. He said that. I take some umbrage to the fact that you're saying that we, I assume I'm going to take the we as me too. I know it's a we and they, but that we ambushed the residents when we've gone through the timeline multiple times, and as a part of the timeline, we received an email from the county saying an individual, Cassandra Padron, requested or filled out an application to acquire the property. Do you want the property? Does the city want the property? And we responded within 10 days saying yes. The fact that, a handful of residents, and really it is a handful of residents, that don't support having a public space in their backyard. There have been petitions, and I know, I did my own unscientific, as it is, unscientific, because it was unscientific, survey to the community. There are many more individuals, not only in that neighborhood, but other neighborhoods that would like to be able to have public space. So I don't see it as any kind of ambush. And that's just, again, it's just my opinion. I'm not debating or arguing it. I'm just saying, I'd like to, at some point, put this to bed, and maybe this does it. If there's nothing else, then can we vote on this? Okay. All those in favor?
Roll call, please.
Roll call.
Go ahead, yes, ma'am.
Councilman Patrick Fiore?
No.
Councilmember Steve Cody?
No.
Vice Mayor Mark Maritzer?
Yes.
Mayor Karen Cunningham?
No.
Member Marcia Matson?
Yes.
Item fails 3-2. And how come Steve got Stephen P. Cody? I'm just kidding. That was great. Thank you. All right. Item 3E.